And welcome back. It's been another week of explosive testimony before Parliament's ad hoc committee probing allegations of corruption in the police service. Former Police Minister Bheki Cele and Deputy Police Minister Cassel Mathale took the hot seat this week, condemning the disbandment of the political killings task team as unjustified, irrational and dangerous. Cele, who led the ministry from 2018 till the middle of 2024, was pressed on his relationships with controversial figures and his oversight of the KwaZulu-Natal political killings task team. His testimony raised questions about whether political connections compromised the independence of policing structures. Meanwhile, Mathale faced 2 days of intense questioning about his role as deputy, particularly his knowledge of directives to disband the task team investigating political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. Evidence leaders probed his working relationship with suspended Minister Senzo Mchunu and whether he acted or failed to act when signs of interference emerged. Together, their testimonies paint a picture of a police service caught between political pressure and its constitutional mandate. And we unpack what their evidence means for accountability, institutional reform, and the credibility of the country's justice system, with who a prominent South African public policy and governance analyst and writer, political commentator, Hlumelo, Xaba, who joins us now. Hlumelo, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Perhaps to start you, what stood out for you most striking in this week's testimony?
Good afternoon to you, Oliver, and to the viewers, and thank you very much for having me. Well, one of the things that stood out for me is the fact that Deputy Minister Cassel Mathale's testimony seemed to be very interlinked to those who actually came before the commission on in the weeks that were preceding his testimony. Because one of the things that he alluded to was the fact that there was no consultation in regards to the disbandment of the political killings task team. And secondly, the minister did not consult with any of the operative stakeholders, being people such as General Mkhwanazi, General Masemula, as well as Major General Dumisani Khumalo, which is something that is very alarming, actually, because one of the things that Cassel Mathale also mentioned was the fact that he only learned about the letter of disbandment on social media, which is something that is very concerning, considering the fact that he is a deputy minister and is supposed to be privy to some of the information that is happening within that ministry. So I think that what the picture that all of this paints is the fact that there's a discord and a disconnect between Cassel Mathale as well as Minister Senzo Mchunu, because one of the things that he also alluded to was the fact that he had an excellent relationship with Minister Bheki Cele, and he was even delegated duties by the former minister. However, with Senzo Mchunu, there hasn't been any delegation or assignment of certain duties and responsibilities thus far in the 7th administration. So for me, those are one of the things that stood out. However, I think that one of the things that were also resurfaced by Cassel Mathale's testimony was the issue of the necessity of deputy ministers, because we are almost more than a year into the GNU now, the 7th administration, yet there have been no functions and responsibilities that have been assigned to him, as well as Paulima Shelo, which is something that is also very concerning for me, considering the fact that these are people that you're supposed to be working hand in hand with. But I think that just before I land on this issue, what seems to be very prevalent insofar as Senzo Mchunu is concerned is the fact that there's a high level of centralization of power by him as a minister, because of the fact that there are no powers that are devolved to his deputy ministers, as well as those who are functionaries within the SAPS as a whole. So I think that's the crux of the matter here, that Senzo Mchunu appears to be someone who centralizes power a lot. Hence, we are here now whereby there was no consultation in regards to the disbandment of the PKTT, nor has there been any powers or duties assigned to his deputy ministers.
What does this say about the president? Because it was the president's decision to appoint 2 deputy ministers to this portfolio, yet none of them have been assigned any functions within the portfolio by the minister more than a year into this administration. Surely this should have concerned the president.
Well, honestly speaking, according to Section 93 of the Constitution, it does stipulate that the president can appoint any amount of deputy ministers, even ministers for that matter. However, if you can look at Section 91 of the Constitution, you will find that the deputy president's roles are clearly and explicitly outlined in regards to what their role are insofar as the cabinet is concerned, because the constitution does stipulate the fact that the deputy president's responsibility is to assist the president in performing his functions, his or her functions. However, when it comes to deputy ministers, it's not as outlined as the deputy president's roles are. So what this tells us is the fact that deputy ministers sometimes, not that they may not be unnecessary, but I think this has actually this actually gives substance to some of the outcries that have come from certain opposition parties, such as Action SA, even the EFF for that matter, in regards to the necessity of deputy ministers. So I really do think that the president in this instance needs to exercise heavy oversight in order to ensure that there are roles and responsibilities that are assigned to deputy ministers, because like former Minister Bheki Cele alluded to last week, that deputy minister, rather the South African Police Service is a very complex department in that you don't just deal with one array of issues, but there's a whole widespread web of issues that you deal with, meaning that you need to actually ensure that there's a devolution of powers or responsibilities rather to people that are your functionaries and operatives, something that we have not seen coming from Minister Senzo Mchunu as compared to Minister Bheki Cele, because one thing that you also need to actually take note of is that this is not Cassel Mathale's first time being the Deputy Minister of SABC. This is his second term being the Deputy Minister, and what he did in his in his testimony is that he juxtaposed Bheki Cele's leadership and that of Senzo Mchunu, because he alluded to the fact that Bheki Cele actually gave him the responsibility of exercising oversight over institutions such as IPID, IDAC, as well as some of the other institutions that are functionaries or units within SABC. So I think that this goes back to what I said, that Minister Senzo Mchunu seems to be centralizing power a lot compared to the former Minister of Police, which was Bheki Cele. But I think, to answer your question, President Cyril Ramaphosa, I actually alluded this even to on another platform where I said that he will have a lot of accounting to do at the Mathale Commission, mainly because of the fact that many of the things that have been unfolding thus far, organizationally as well as within his cabinet or at SABC, have actually happened under his watch, and it seems as if he was privy to some of the things that were happening but decided not to act punitively on Senzo Mchunu. So I think that he'll have a lot of accounting to do. However, I think it's just a pity that he is not on the list of people that need to come and testify at the ad hoc inquiry, which is something that is quite alarming as well, considering the veracity of the allegations and implications that he has been mentioned in.
Yeah, let's talk about the political capture. That is to say, the testimony that we heard at the Mathale Commission about Mathale being a donor of and a supporter of what would be the political ambitions of Senzo Mchunu. But more than that, before the ad hoc committee in Parliament, we heard similar testimony from the former Minister Bheki Cele, who says that he had it on good record from Mathale himself. And he heard directly from Mathale himself that he had just come from a meeting with Senzo Mchunu where they were discussing his presidential campaign. Does it triangulate for you in a way that it adds up?
Well, for me, it actually denotes the fact that our politics generally in South Africa have been, or rather, let me just say, our political system has been corrupted by people who who are outside of the state and are not really actors within the political terrain. Because I'll take you back to the 2017 ANC Nazareth conference, whereby President Ramaphosa is said to have received donations of about 500 million rand. Yet, still today, the CR17 documents have not yet been divulged to the public, because these are issues that are public knowledge. We still have CR17 documents being sealed in court. Meanwhile, these are things that are supposed, as the public, we are supposed to be privy to, because they actually have got to do with the people that are leading us in the country. So I think that this actually, the revelations that Ket Mathale was a willing donor to Senzo Mchunu's presidential campaign, just denotes the fact that our politics have been corrupted by money and other actors that are outside of the state, who actually may have an interest, hoping that the people whom they give money to will be able to get into the higher echelons of power and actually give back to them in whatever way. Because what we have seen also, what has been happening also is that you have a cohort of non-state actors being in the criminal underworld as well as in the business cluster who actually whose ploy is actually to capture those who are in the higher echelons of power in order to ensure that whether it's in the criminal justice system or whether it's within treasury or whichever aspect of the state, that they may actually ensure that they actually have a smooth sailing and do not get caught in this instance. So I think that what was revealed in the Madlanga Commission, as well as the Ad Hoc Committee inquiry in regards to the funding of Senzo Mchunu is not something that is new in the ANC. It's just something that has been happening for quite some time now. And I just think it's unfortunate that there's a moral incapacity to actually push back against such acts of criminality and colluding with people that are in the criminal underworld.
Yeah, Hlumelo, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights and analysis. Really do appreciate it. That's political commentator Hlumelo Xaba.